All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 15th, 2021 meeting of the Abington Finance Committee. We're officially halfway through the last month of 2021, which is bananas. We have a good agenda tonight. We are digging in, first real-time digging into our budget process for next year, next fiscal year. We will go through the current budget and revenue, free cash. We'll dig into the draft budget for fiscal year 23. Then we'll go through our regular items, liaison reports, correspondence, review of minutes, and we'll set up when our next meeting will be. We're going to hit the ground right away. We have our town manager, Scott Lambiase, here with us. Scott, thank you for coming.
Thanks for being here.
How's fiscal year 22 going so far?
So far, it's pretty much on target. I think, Sonia, you can run down this general fund revenue report that you did for us and give you a pretty good idea of that, you know, we're hitting our marks where we would expect to be. And I don't think we have any crazy unexpected expenditures that are going to cause us any heartburn, at least this year.
I don't see any, I haven't heard of any expenditures that are looking like they're going to throw us off the mark. Right now we're about 46% of the way through the year, and right now our expenses are coming in at 44%, so we're tracking pretty well. And that's including that large pension contribution that's paid at the very beginning of the year. So I'd say we're tracking pretty well. And revenues, we're at 45%, and there's always a lag recording the revenues as we reconcile all the bank statements and get everything ready to go. So I would say that we're doing pretty good.
Excellent to hear. And I should have introduced you, Sonia Hodge, who's our treasurer, collector, and our finance director. Finance director. I was trying to find the right words there, so my apologies. Thank you for joining us, Sonia.
Thanks for having me.
So, can I ask a question? Just, and we're probably going to go through this in more detail, but the revenue budget forecast looks like we're projected to be 2.3 or so million in the hole, based upon total expenses over total revenue.
Looking at the budget?
The budget forecast?
We're on this.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
That's next year.
That's next year?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay, all right. Jump the gun.
How does it work with so this is the sources, and then the uses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gap of about $600,000. So we got 59.5 for sources and 60 million for uses.
So the difference might be items that were approved at town meeting, I believe, additional articles. I can double check for you.
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and then so when you look at the school department, the budgeted is 200, I don't know if those are just flipped. See that for the expenses?
Which page are you on?
Page 3,
Where they,
on education.
Yep, I see that. That's probably just an issue with our formula. Thank you for pointing that out. We'll fix that.
Okay. I don't think we want to be at 1,157%
Yeah,
expenses.
not been right through the year.
Yeah, I'm sure
If it works its way
That would
backwards.
not be good.
Coded to expenses that
Unless it
should be,
was-
or coded to salaries, but are supposed to be in the expenses column. We'll fix that.
but Scott, we're running where we should be at this time of year.
Yeah, I think we're pretty comfortable with where we're at right now, yeah.
I know one of the big questions, given the way that the economy has been, the way that the world has been, is revenues coming in, but we're on track there for
Yeah.
what we projected?
I think we were conservative enough with our projections. And Sonia, I think you can speak to the excise tax we had talked about. I think, the ability for people to find new cars
Yep.
is probably driving that down, and we'll drive it down again next year if it
Yeah.
doesn't correct itself. But we are seeing, I think we had added in our marijuana tax, so we're actually seeing some of that, and it's trending pretty much where we expected it.
I'm sure Greg will ask, have we broken the $100 million mark yet?
We're not quite there.
Have we broken the $1 million mark?
No. At this point, we're looking like we will break the 200,000 plus mark, though, so.
Not terrible.
What was it that, if you don't mind, what was it that we projected?
I think we projected.
215?
Yeah, it was a little over
15,
two.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're likely to make that. Because we only have one
Open, so.
that's open, right? Whether the other one's open or not, we'll see, but the one that's open is actually doing very well. And what we see here on this part of the collection part is just the tax revenue. We haven't gotten into what the, 3% of the gross is that comes to us additionally beyond that. So that's why I think this number trends the way we would expect it to.
I also noticed that there's, first of all, thank you for this
Yes, this is excellent.
report. This is
Yes.
excellent. We've been hoping to get this. The auction proceeds, that something you hadn't planned on, but we auctioned something off.
Yeah, and I think, that's kind of a discussion that we're gonna get into with you guys in the very near future, obviously. That we have proceeds from the auction, somewhere around 600,000, Sonia, sound about right?
Right.
Do you want to, just for those watching,
Oh,
explain
yeah.
what was being auctioned?
That was from the surplus land auction, and we had a couple surplus buildings, one or two buildings, but mostly land. I think initially it was a little over $1 million. We had some properties and some sales that just didn't go through, which was to be expected. Some of the properties weren't what they were expected to be, and some that we actually pulled back to from the list that we felt that would be better suited to put into open space and to keep for conservation purposes. So, so we ended up with a little over 600,000, which is great. When we get further into this, you'll see we'll talk about the free cash that we're going to have. So we will be coming to ask about what we can do with this money, or what some recommendations from this committee and other committees also, to put towards capital projects. I think we want to make sure, internally we have talked that we want to make sure that some of this gets put into different areas of the community, be it the downtown districts, the parks. We have some ball fields that could use some work, and we just think that that'd be a great place to showcase where this money came from, or back to where it came from. Because we have that, we have some revenue replacement money through ARPA that, unfortunately, it's not what as much as we had initially had hoped for and expected it to be. But we have quite a bit of money there, and that comes out on a calendar basis. So right now, it does look like that going up to the end of this calendar year, there was 300,000 plus in revenue replacement money. And we're not sure, I think Sonia probably can talk more about when they can get into the next calendar year and how that works, and sort of when we'll see that money. So there is a fairly good amount of money there that we can do some projects with. A lot of the other money that isn't revenue replacement money that we're sitting on and that Plymouth County is distributing also, and we're not really sure what's going to come from the state. Right now, that's kind of geared towards certain types of projects. And a lot of what we'll be looking to do with it will be offsetting any grants that we might get, or other monies that we might get that would go towards our water quality issues. So we're partnering with Rockland to try and make sure that, we take care of those PFAS issues immediately. And, Joe LaPointe, I think he'll speak to you about it when he's here. obviously, but he's been speaking about it, you know, at a couple, you know, different meetings to try and get that message out that, you know, they're not even, you know, they have a plan. They're trying to put the plan into effect, but still I think there's issues with what they're doing or with what DEP is doing as far as measuring and quantifying these issues, so. Yeah, that's where I think, like I said, I think that's sort of a larger discussion that we get into later, though, is sort of looking at all of that, whether it's the free cash, ARPA cash, and that sale of that auction property cash, and how best we can do it. We just started working with the Collins Center and on a long-term capital plan, and we're putting it's an aggressive schedule. We're trying to get that together so we have something for this committee and for town meeting this year. But it's got to be a very, you know, comprehensive plan, and we're going to have to make decisions on how we want to fund that plan. So that'll have a lot to do with, you know, any ideas that we have to do with this money.
Thank you.
And Scott, the Collins Center is?
UMass Boston has a part of it. It's the Collins Center for Government, and they offer a lot of aid for different governmental activities. I know that they've helped us, or they put some scopes of work together for IT studies and for compensation studies, and in one particular one, this capital plan that they put, I've seen, and I'll share some examples with you guys, that the towns that they've worked with that have really wanted to get a good, robust plan together, they've helped them enormously put a really good plan. So it is, you know, as much as you put into it is what you're going to get, what we'll get out of it, but the assistance, it's I want to say $20,000 plus grant that we got to help us with it. So it's no cost to us to put this together. It's just elbow grease on our part.
Is that how we get that 5-year projection that we had that ran?
Yeah, they did, and that's what I had, initially, I was allowed to ask them for a couple different grants, so I really wanted the capital plan. But the other thing I wanted was an update on those projections. They did them, I think, back in 2016, so when I asked for it, they were like, yeah, we already did that. I said, well, I know, but things have changed, and, you know, I'm a new guy, and I'd like to have you come in and...
A 5-year projection that was done 5 years ago.
Right, yeah, I said, can we have a little help with that? And they were, no. So we ended up, actually, the second grant that we did get from them is going into our IT program, or mostly our website, our upgrade of our website, and our upgrade, and tying that in with our social media and sort of tracking social media trends and making sure that we're responsive to what the community is looking for.
Do they do other things as far as in the IT space? I mean,
They have, yeah, there's quite a list of things that they do. I'm sure there's probably a cybersecurity component that they would help with, and I would imagine it was a fairly good list of things that they offer. We're eligible, like we won't be eligible again for 2 years, but those 2 years will be here pretty quick, and we'll be able to pick 2 more projects out of them, and, you know, we'll look and see what they have.
Other questions or concerns?
Just on the ARPA funding, so was that the prior ARPA funding? Does that include the bill that was just signed by the state, the $4 billion there for?
So I don't believe it's the latest one you're talking about from the state. I think more money will come out of that one.
Mm-hmm.
So the state got ARPA money, the county's got ARPA
Yeah.
money, and town's got it direct.
Okay.
Our first payment direct last March was 800,000 plus. Out of that 800,000 plus, it just came to this town, 300 or so thousand we can use as revenue replacement. This goes into it all goes into a grant fund. It's not something that has to be appropriated at town meeting. This is something I had come to you guys and said, you know, hey, we really need a street sweeper and a used bucket truck, and some police cruisers. So there's some things that we were able to do with that, and there's not a lot, like the police cruisers won't really be able to come out of it, and the bucket trucks probably that we can't find anyways. Doesn't really pigeonhole into the big picture of it. We can do anything we want with that 350,000, that's pretty discretionary. The rest of it is very specific on how you can spend it, whether it's towards infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, you know, in things that affect disproportionate populations, which, you know, it's hard to sort of pinpoint that in this town. In the cities, it works a lot better. So the money that went to Plymouth County, which was a fairly significant amount of money, they're distributing amongst the towns, and they're holding that money, and we're able to submit to them, like we submitted the street sweeper to them. They have, say, $2 million of our money, or money that's allocated towards us, but it's theirs, and they're saying, oh, we're gonna let you use it, Abington, for whatever, and so we said, hey, well, we bought a street sweeper, can you pull it out of that? And they have auditors, and they have people that'll look at it, and at the end of the day, if it passes the test, then we're held harmless on it. And I think, Sonia, you were running the revenue replacement through them also, just for the auditing portion, just make sure that was sort of.
Right, yeah, the nice thing about the county is they have 3 different levels of review. And when it comes time for the treasury to audit, any monies that we receive from the county, they will go to the county about. The county will go through that audit with treasury, and that's part of the reason that they want to review it so many times. They've got a consulting firm, attorneys reviewing them, accounting firms reviewing them, and then Plymouth County reviews them as well before they sign off on it. So they know that they're distributing the funds properly. We don't have to worry about the auditing part of it if Treasury comes knocking. Now, the money that we got directly from Treasury, if they decide to audit, that is something that we would have to handle in-house. And so our thinking is to use that money for things that we absolutely know, without a doubt, are approved uses of ARPA funds, like water projects. I mean, that's the easiest one to get through. And then these other ones that are a little, could go one way or the other, or it depends on how you're looking at it, or something that we may need to argue a little bit more, we want to run those through Plymouth County, because if it gets through them, then we know that we're good. And so they have a pretty good revenue replacement calculation spreadsheet for us to use, that we have to use to request funds. And again, if we go through that process, if all 3 levels of review show that our figures are right, we've calculated it right, and we've categorized our revenues properly, then we can feel very comfortable that when we use that money, we don't have to worry about Treasury coming and saying, nope, that wasn't allowable, you have to give us the money back. So that's our thinking there. I also wondered, I listened to the last meeting, and I wondered if I could explain the revenue replacement a little bit, because when I heard it, I think there was a little bit of confusion about what it is and how it's been calculated.
Please.
Is that something that you guys would like me to do?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So the revenue replacement calculation, at first it looks at fiscal year 2019 revenues. So they're looking at the last fiscal year before COVID hit. They want to look at your revenues for that year. And then they are assuming a 4.1% growth year over year from there. What complicates it a little bit is that all of their calculations are based on a calendar year, whereas our fiscal year obviously does not follow the calendar. So we're comparing calendar year 2020 to fiscal year 2019. So there's 6 months of revenues that just don't get included at all. We don't look at them, which is fine. But we calculate the 4.1% growth from fiscal year 2019, and they take calendar year 2020 revenues and compare the two. If there's a difference, if our actual 2020 revenues are less than that 4.1% growth, then that difference is our revenue replacement. That if we are eligible for anything, which we think we're eligible for just shy of 300,000, which we're submitting to the county to have reviewed, we can use that for just about anything. You can't put it in stabilization or anything like that, but you can use it for operating expenses, capital, anything like that. Now, we do it year by year. So we're submitting our 2020 calculation. Once 2021 is finished and we've posted all of our revenues and we're comfortable that everything's right, then we can submit another calculation for calendar year 2021 if there's revenue loss. Now, if we do the calculation and it shows that we actually brought in more than what they would be expecting on the calculation, then we don't have to report it. We're not going to lose revenue replacement from calendar year 2020. It's not going to net out that way. But then we can do the calculation again the following year. And if that year we show a loss, we can submit that again for more revenue replacement. And we can do this all the way up until the end of calendar year 2023. So we have more opportunities to get revenue replacement. I mean, obviously, it'd be great if we were getting 4.1% revenue every year. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but either way, the money would be there for that. And that is a great way to use the money because there's so much flexibility. And like Scott was saying, the other uses are, besides a water project, it's difficult to get everything through.
My hope is we'll be able to use it for some, it can use it for infrastructure, so where Johnstone has so much roadway that needs to be done, I think that if we have it tied in with improvements for our stormwater pollution prevention program, that we could use the money to offset some of that. Because we do have, I think, another 800,000 coming in March.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a significant amount of money that we do have that we can do a lot with. It's just making sure that we're doing the right thing with it.
So there's the ARPA that comes directly to the town.
Yeah, which is the 800,000 we got last year.
Right.
And another 800,000 that's coming in March, probably.
And so is the revenue replacement coming out of that 800,000 or the Plymouth County?
Sonia
allocation?
prefers to put it through the Plymouth County for the reason she had just explained, that it's just belts and suspenders as far as we know that if once Plymouth County says, yeah, no, you did it right, here's your money, it comes out of the Plymouth County bucket, we know that we're not going to have any problems. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Essentially, if the federal government has a problem with it,
They're coming after
they
Plymouth
come
County.
after Plymouth County and not us.
We could take it out of our 800,000 and just submit that calculation on our own using the same formula,
Yeah.
and then just kind of hope that we did it right.
We're
In which case, if we
so
were,
we're using our direct
we're using their
money-
auditors
We're
to
using
help.
our direct money for things we're 100% sure of. We're
Right.
using Plymouth County to go through the process
Of the things that
of
could
auditing
come
to
back.
make sure
right.
that they're good with.
Right,
what's
and
gonna
you know,
be
I mean, like I
process.
said, Plymouth County has hired attorneys and accountants.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a whole team that is just focusing on this. I think it honestly would be a little silly not to take advantage of that expertise that they have at their disposal to make sure that we're doing everything properly in the way Treasury wants us to do it.
So have we received both installments at the town level or just the 800?
The first.
Just the first one.
First one. And have we spent any of that yet?
There's a little bit of money that is spent, and I think that the street sweeper we did put through Plymouth County. We haven't heard back yet.
Correct.
All right, so there's a street sweeper, minor, some,
I think Paul means the town specific, the town direct.
no, we haven't.
Okay.
No.
Is
But
there-
again, it's a long program.
Well,
You
we,
know, it
yeah,
doesn't
this is,
expire until 2024, so we have plenty of time to really consider how we want to spend the money to make sure that we're being thoughtful about it.
So the money that we receive directly is, we have until 2024
yeah,
versus, you had said the other is 2023?
Well, that's when the calculations
For the
are based
revenue
on
replacement.
the
That's when
calendar
they-
year through
The
December
end of
31 of
calendar year,
2023. So
okay.
obviously, we wouldn't submit it by then. We'd
Okay.
have that spring to take care of that.
and Plymouth County really has only just gotten set up. They've really,
Mhm.
they've, and it's not for any other reason other than they're being very thoughtful and careful and putting the right people into place to do this for them and do the work. they were very successful with the CARES Act program. It was sort of the same thing, that the money that came through Plymouth County to us through CARES Act funding, they did sort of, I think they might have an extra level of protection on this one, but really all of our submittals that went through them, they were really careful, paid attention, they audited them, and they did such a good job. It took a huge burden off of the town to have to deal with some of this stuff, so.
And not only that, if I can do a plug for Plymouth County, when they did their CARES Act administration, when you compare other towns that are the same size as ours, we got almost double the money from the county compared to if we'd gone through the state, because their administration costs were so low, and they really made sure that they got as much money to the towns as they could. So they really did do a great job with it.
Excellent. Other questions there? Other questions on current fiscal year 22 budget? All right, Scott and Sonia, thank you so much for all of the information on this. I feel comfortable saying this is the most information we've gotten at this point in a fiscal year while I've been on the committee, and we definitely appreciate it.
No problem. I'll also give credit to Andrew, our town accountant. He created those reports, with the expenditure and revenue reports, so that we can run the data in our finance system, and it just automatically updates everything. It makes it much easier to get information to you when you need it.
Excellent.
So he did a great job.
Very good.
Well, he has our thanks as well.
Yeah, these are great.
We should bring them to a meeting.
So Sonia,
me
these
see.
are reports that you run out of the system? It's not like you're...
Those are not system reports, no. I had given you system reports when I first came this fall, and I think these are much nicer, much easier to read, and he created them from scratch.
But it's not like he set it up now, so this is
So it's a runnable
like
report.
maybe not quite a push a button and it comes out, but it's
You
semi-automatic.
push about 15 buttons and it comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good.
But
That's what I mean.
he's not bringing it into Excel and then manipulating it from there. It's coming...
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're running a database, and it automatically reads the database and updates the figures for us.
Very good.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
Next item on our agenda is check on free cash.
Let Sonia answer that, but it's much better than last year, right?
Like, almost 10 times better. Yeah, we just submitted our free cash calculations to the state, so we haven't heard back from them yet on their initial questions. There's always a back and forth. They always want to clarify, review, make sure that they're understanding what we entered and that what we entered was correct. So we're estimating about $700,000 for free cash this year. Last year it was about 70,000, so this is much better. We'll actually be able to do something with it, maybe make some capital purchase or whatever is decided. Again, there's going to be some back and forth, so I don't know for sure what the exact number is going to be. It typically does fluctuate a little bit during this process, but hopefully we'll have that figure for you early in the new year.
Excellent.
Do you necessarily do anything, or is there a best practice of we should always have a certain amount in free cash?
Well,
Scott, do you want to answer
yeah,
that?
I
or
mean,
would you
it's
like
it's tough because
me to?
if you consider what free cash is.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we like to see free cash, but it's just, yeah, we have to be tight on our budgets for obvious reasons that we'll get into,
Right.
as we make our estimates and our revenue estimates. So it depends if we, obviously, we want to be conservative on our revenue estimates, but we don't want to be so conservative. And obviously, we don't want to overfund the budgets beyond what they actually need, but that's how you end up with the free cash.
Yeah.
So, it's a delicate balance,
Yeah.
but we do like to see it, obviously.
No, but that's what I mean,
Yeah.
is there, you should always have X amount just in case something big happens. And maybe free cash isn't the place you keep
Right.
it.
No,
So
that's
the-
Maybe
stabilization.
it's,
Yeah, stabilization is
Stabilization.
what we look to
Okay.
add money in. That free cash is really, so at town meeting, we will hopefully every year, move some of the free cash money into stabilization. But stabilization is the place, essentially the rainy day fund is
Okay.
the other name for
All
it.
right, okay.
Free cash is really when you balance the books at the end of the year, what's left.
Okay, yeah, all right.
And just out of curiosity, what's the current stabilization fund at?
Is it 4 million? A little over 4 million?
It's a little over 3,
I was
Wow,
gonna say,
nice.
which is very healthy for a budget our size.
and when I first joined the committee 8, 9 years ago at this point, it was much lower than that. So we've been-
2 years ago was
Yeah.
much
We've
lower than
been
that.
building it up. I think a credit to Sonia and Scott and the town government as a whole. As we started into COVID, we put a lot of money into stabilization with the assumption that we were going to need it.
Yeah.
And we have not
Knock on wood.
gone into stabilization to this point. So definite credit to our town government in getting through this time without laying people off and without dipping into stabilization.
And we have some numbers, and I think, when we get into, our schedule that I put together, we had reviewed some policies, some financial policies that we updated, and within that, we have a mark that we want to hit on that number. And so we want to, make sure that we're putting something there to make sure, because obviously the budget number's growing. So we still have to, keep our stabilization growing too. So we do have in there, we had some suggestions on what that number was be, but other things that we would dedicate money to. And I think once that's at a healthy place, then we might even consider a second stabilization that would be a capital stabilization fund.
So did you say that it's around $3 million?
I think it's a little over 3 million.
A little more than 3. Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So then, what's the process, so if the Commonwealth, says, okay, you get $700,000 in free cash, then where does
So in this budget process that we're starting for town meeting and for fiscal year '23, one of the things that we will do and work with Scott and Sonia on is we will go through, when we have that final number for free cash, we'll go through in our meetings what that's going to be used for.
oh, okay.
And we'll say, we're projecting this much to go to stabilization, this much to go to OPEB, this much for maybe snow and ice removal, this
Oh,
much
okay. All
for
right.
capital expenditures. And so we look through that whole amount and we kind of break it down into what are we going to do with that money. And there have been years where we looked at it and we said, we need to put as much of this as we can into stabilization. And there are years that we've looked at it, like the winter of 2015.
You can't even pay your snow and ice bill.
Where we paid as much of the snow and ice removal as we could that year and the next year and the next year with free cash. So it definitely fluctuates, but we go through that in the budget process.
And there isn't a
that's coming.
town policy in regards to stabilization and free cash and how that works? Like, there isn't like a percentage of free cash that has to go into stabilization?
No, there are some
There are
financial policies, and I'll
recommendations.
get you a copy of those, because I'm gonna ask, I know this board
You
reviewed
sent,
them.
yeah, you sent to us last year.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Paul, you weren't on when we did it last
No.
time, yeah, so I'll get you a copy, but my hopes is, because although this board, I think, looked at them, there were still some tweaks that we wanted to put in there, some sort of a number and something to tie that number to that Sonia and I were kicking around for OPEB, that would specifically go towards taking care of stuff like that. And we were thinking, depending on what comes up in the future with this marijuana revenue, it's a new source of revenue, that maybe that's a dedicated percentage of that or a dedicated dollar amount of that that would go towards paying down our pension liabilities or, but we do want to get that ironed out. Like I said, within my schedule for coming up to town meeting, I would, in a perfect world, I would envision a joint meeting with this board and with the Board of Selectmen that would vote the budget, or maybe, discuss the budget at any rate and maybe, and sort of codify and vote those as permanent policies, the new updated ones. So in the interim, there's just a few little tweaks like that that we want to make. I don't think that we'd ever put something towards, I mean, maybe a percentage on free cash to go towards stabilization till you hit a certain point. Because at some point, stabilization's where you want it. I mean, here it is a perfect example where, you know, we did throw it in there, and if we ever needed it, it's been raining, you know, and somehow we've been able to get through. Let's hope we can get through another year, obviously, but it's great if we don't have to use it.
Other questions on free cash?
Nope.
All right, which brings us to the draft fiscal year '23 budget. And I will start out, as we have our sheet to look at, I will start out for Drew and for Paul with the piece of information that at the very beginning of this process, the first draft budget that we see, there is always a large deficit.
Okay.
Through the budget process, we work towards balancing that, but it starts out with larger requests from the departments and more wish list things, and works its way down, and we work with where the different monies will go and where any increases or decreases might come from. But it does always start out with a pretty sizable deficit. So don't be too
Don't panic.
shocked. Don't be too shocked or panicked by that. This is,
We're gonna ask, how much of, so this is the entire town, correct?
yes.
So how much of the school budget makes up that deficit?
Well, I mean, the school budget's in there.
But with projecting, you know, expenses exceeding revenue by 2.4 million.
Well, keep in mind, so what we've entered in here at this point is we've asked all the departments to come to us, and they enter their numbers.
Right.
Police chief says, I need X amount more guys. You know, they look at what their contractual obligations are, what their staffing is, and if they feel as though they need more staffing, that's all gone in here. The school, we carried just a number above last year. 3%, Sonia?
3%
Yeah.
is what's on here.
So-
Which is just not,
3%.
that wasn't given to us by the school.
Oh, okay.
That's a
Right.
number that
Yeah,
we,
this is just
right, we
when
put
Scott
that in.
and Sonia and the departments formulate the initial budget. The school is working on their budget, but
Yeah.
they don't have the definite
Oh, okay, so
number.
they haven't.
So the number
Because they
that-
still have to present it to the school committee in January.
Right, and
Yep.
the number
Yep,
that,
okay.
the number that you see in here on page 2 highlighted in yellow is essentially
The
Scott's.
sideways one over there.
Yep, that's essentially Scott's placeholder for the schools.
Oh, all right. Oh, okay.
That's to try and make the budget process work
A little bit, right?
as best we can.
In a lot of our revenue numbers right now, we haven't dialed in on what we want to do for projections for them. Again, like Sonia and I had said earlier, that, you know, we're not sure where things will go with the motor vehicle excise tax. I think if we saw over the next few months that supply chain issues change and chips are,
Start being
right?
available.
Yeah, maybe we look at that a little bit more. We've just had some talks with Yolanta on new growth numbers, and I think we're probably, you know, comfortable if we bump our new growth number up above what we have in here now. Chapter 70 in unrestricted governmental aid, we won't know what those numbers are going to be until the governor submits his budget, and even then, that's just the governor's numbers, and that's going to be sometime around the end of January. The marijuana, you know, if I saw another one of those places open up, if somebody said to me tomorrow, we're ready to go, and here's the list, the thing from Cannabis Control Commission that says I can start tomorrow, I'm gonna feel a lot more comfortable adjusting that number. So these numbers are all going to change, and now that we have this, and as the departments come and meet with this group, we start dialing in on you know, whose needs are the most dire, you know, because they all have good needs, and they're all, you know, they're all realistic. Nobody asked for anything that doesn't make sense. And I wish we could, you know, I wish we could do it all. One of the big things that I mentioned to the selectmen on Monday night on this budget that we absolutely have to talk about and come up with a plan for is our trash. You know, we're at $1.4 million going into next year, and, you know, at one point in time, they put it in here, you know, at a $1.2 million budget item. So it sucks more and more money out of the rest of the budget every year as it increases, and my thought is it should not be part of the general budget. It should be like a user fee, like water, like anything else that gives us better control. You don't, you know, I'm not saying that we would leave the 1.2 in the budget. If we did that, there'd be a rollback that we'd have to take out of there and give back. Maybe probably finance the first year for most of the trash, but going into the second year, then everybody would end up getting billed properly. What it would give us is that ability to deal with the fluctuations, because it isn't going to decrease unless we really, really come up with a better way on how we handle our trash. And we're not the only ones in it. I mean, people all over the worldwide. Yeah, all over the world are trying to figure it out. So it's not just us, but, and it's not that we're doing it wrong. I'm sure there's other, you know, it's just there's no market for recycling, and it doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon.
Yeah, because it's a 22% increase and a couple $100,000.
$751 right now. If we want to be talking until midnight, I'll have Greg start talking about recycling.
So are we considering a user fee now for trash removal?
I am, but you know, it's not gonna be, I don't have that, you know, power to just do that. This is something that would go through this committee, go through the, you know, the selectmen, and then go through town meeting. It's not something that I would say, but it's something that I'm proposing that we have to talk about, we have to consider. I think we would want to have public hearings on it. It may not be ready for town meeting this year, but it's certainly something that we have to wrap our head around, because it just keeps increasing and pulling money out of the budget where, you know, that's, you know, not that I want to pick on any department, but there's, you know, 2 police officers beyond what was originally anticipated when that was put into the budget. And if it's up another 40,000, 50,000, 100,000 next year, it just comes out of the budget. There's no, it doesn't make sense, because it's going to continue to grow.
I mean, I know, like, what would you say is driving the increase in the cost? It's just...
There's no way to put it. Yeah, the regulations on where it goes, how they have to sort it. You know, they're shipping it to, you know, it leaves the state in some cases, it goes to CMAS, some of it gets burned, some of it gets sorted. Very little bit, I think, is clean enough to recycle. There's some of the papers and cardboard.
One of the biggest issues that has been happening since I came onto the committee is the worldwide market for recyclable material has tanked. When I first...
Didn't China just say we're not taking it?
Yeah, when I first came on the committee, I think we were, like, our recycle bill was either zero or we were being paid for our recyclable material. And I think as of last year, it was significantly more than trash.
Yeah. It's crazy.
To have people take away our recyclables. So it's gone from essentially a money maker for the town to a massive hole in the budget. So it's literally the worldwide market.
And
like
is
you
there
said,
any...
China stopped taking it.
Right.
They're one of the issues is facilities to process it have to go through lots of regulations to be built. And there's not a lot of them being built and being put into place here in the United States, so it has to go elsewhere.
Yeah, and, you know, so my overall recommendation is that we start to look at it, talk about it, and look at what other communities are doing, because there are other ways to do it, and there's things where they pay as you throw, and you have to buy the bags, and the bags will offset the cost of it, or, you know, obviously, we don't have the facility to set up a transfer station. There's towns that have their own transfer stations, and you pay to dump there. We did this one, you know, in Whitman, where I live, and they took it out of the budget, and they gave everybody a user fee. And you have a chance, you don't have to use it. If you can find a better place or a better deal in town, someone to come and take your garbage, you're welcome to do so. I don't think anybody has. It's still a very reasonable fee. I think it, you know, maybe $300 a household or whatever. And it's the same system. We already own the buckets. We purchased those. We own those. We would still have a company come and pick it up. You know, I mean, we could always look into making it part of municipal government again and have municipal trash hauling, but you know, then we gotta go out and buy trucks and guys, and we have to look for a place to bring it. So there are options. I don't wanna, you know, and the other option is just to keep it the way it is and bang our head against the wall every year too. You know, it's just definitely something that it's time that we have to have this discussion, and it may be worthy of a subcommittee. I think at some point, I think, you know, members of this committee and the selectmen and the Board of Health maybe should get together and consider it. Like I said, again, I think it also involves a lot of input from the public, because ultimately, we have to know. I mean, we don't want to change the way it works curbside necessarily. I think that the user experience would be the same. It's just how they pay for it, and it would be a separate bill every year. We would be able to set the fee every year, and we'd probably have a small factor in there that would build like in case there's a surge in the tipping costs, and, you know, maybe some years that it would be reduced.
Now, when we switch vendors, was there any initial savings going, did we lower the costs?
Yeah, we saved quite a bit actually this year, but we were already well beyond our 1.2 that was originally earmarked for it back. I want to say, it was obviously well before I got here. I want to say maybe it was 2015 or so that it was done, but I was told anyways. So
are we thinking about recycling at this point, or?
Are we thinking about what?
Not recycling, the recycling that goes into the trash?
I don't think we can. It's not, you mean the recycling that gets thrown away anyways?
Yes.
So Greg has been a champion of over the last couple of years when we've discussed this, for any town to not actually recycle and to just put the recycling in with the trash, which at this point the trash costs less than the recycling. You would have to apply for a waiver from the state of Massachusetts. Is it environmental protection?
Probably, yeah, DEP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would have to grant the waiver to allow us to do that. And to the best of my knowledge, no waivers have actually been granted.
I've never heard of it.
I don't know if any have actually been applied for, but as of the last time we got that information, no waivers have been granted. But with the difference in cost between recycling and trash, it is always something that is of interest.
You know, and I'll put it out to, you know, the other cities and towns and see what recommendations they have. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways that it's done. And I'm sure that we're not the only ones that still have it within the operating budget. But I think most of them are looking at it the same way we are if they do have it in their operating budget.
But it's,
My only question is, at what point, and I appreciate it, I know we have to get a waiver or whatever it is, but at what point do you say, it is getting to be a little crazy to separate these things that then go to the same place? And I'm all in for recycling. Let's recycle everything, and I'm good with it. My point is, if they're not recycling, I guess I don't understand why they wouldn't even grant the waiver. But besides that, what would even be the rationale to not grant the waiver? So we're gonna make every homeowner separate everything, but then it's going to the same place.
Why do we think it's going to the same place?
Can you explain to me if it gets recycled?
Well, there is a certain percentage of what we do recycle is good. You know, some of the paper products and the cardboard products, and things fluctuate with the, I mean, right now, there's no interest in the glass, but I would imagine the metals, the cans probably generate, you know, some interest. The plastic is the killer. Nobody wants the plastic. The plastic is all re-recycled
So
already.
if you don't know that specific thing, and you put plastic in your back box, whatever this thing is, the trash thing, and it ends up, I'm telling you, it just goes to the same place. There's nobody that like sorts through it at the place, like, oh, let me take out this, and it's all going to the same place now. There's many articles that have been written about it. It's not just me coming up with something.
No, I think it's well worth us looking into it more, and, you know, I can bring in some trash people. They can go down that road and help explain where the trash goes. But my big picture on it right now is figuring out how it works within our budget.
but I guess if it was originally budgeted at 1.2, what was that, 6 years ago? Why would we think it would just stay like stable at 1.2 when everything else?
Well, you probably wouldn't think it would stay stable, nobody would, although there was a point in time when it was.
So there was a point where it was, I think, a 3-year contract. So we had the specific amount that it was going to be over those 3 years. When that contract ended, we were doing essentially a year by year and trying to either work out a new contract or figure out what we could do with it.
And we can keep, we just put it out to bid for another 3-year contract. We can keep rolling that number in. My point is that it is just gonna keep getting higher.
Yep.
And, you know, we only have the ability to raise X amount. And it's just, it's growing more than we can raise our tax or our levy, or through the levy. So, it's more predictable or easier for us to handle if we rolled it back and had a user fee on it. So it wouldn't, you know, we're not saying we're keeping the money in the budget and use it for other stuff. You know, the point is that money would have to go back, come out of the budget, that initial amount, and.
So like, for example, the water department. Water department at one time was in the general budget, got taken out of the budget, went into the user fees for the water department. That gets handled specifically by the water department. They pay for what they need. They charge the users based on usage, and they set the rate of what they charge based on what needs to come in to cover the expenses.
And again, at the end of the day, it may be that we don't change that, but then we should really look at, you know, what we're doing with trash in general and decide, are there other ways to save? Because it's just one of those numbers that just keeps growing and growing.
So for comparison purposes, so Whitman, you brought up, so Whitman, do they get billed like quarterly, just like water or something?
I think it's biannually.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So like $150
Yeah,
biannually,
it's
something
not
like that?
terrible.
Okay.
They, you know, I think it's per, I want to say it's per living unit, so a duplex would get 2 bills.
Okay.
They don't do, as far as I know, they don't do anything that would have more than a 3-family would be
Okay.
not done. you have the, like I said, you have the option to opt out there.
Mhm.
If you can find a more reasonable way to deal with your trash, or there's some folks who generate very, very little trash, that it's just not worth it to them, and they have other avenues to dispose of it, so they would benefit from this also.
Okay.
Certainly something to look at.
Yeah, like I said, I just want to, I think we need the conversation, I think we need to involve the, involve the public in it and see what their thoughts are, and at the end of the day, if they don't want to change anything, we don't change anything.
It makes sense to me. I think it's all gonna be in like the way it's presented to the public, you know what I mean? Because it does make logical sense at this point to me personally.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's the same, like I said, the same, they still get rid of their trash, they still get curbside, and the fee's probably gonna be similar to what's in their tax bill
Yeah.
anyways, it would be less.
So what are other key items in the budget?
Well, health insurance is always,
Know about it.
our health insurance costs are always interesting. So Sonia and I have had, discussions on looking at ways to save on that, and we're hoping that something will come out of that. The police department?
Can we go on health insurance? Does the town participate in GIC?
No.
Is that a potential savings there, or?
There's other avenues. The GIC is not really a good one.
Okay.
For us, we're looking into Maya, which is, not sure how many municipalities, there must be close to over 200 municipalities are members of Maya, so we're looking into that, hopefully they'll save money. We were with, before I got here, they were with Mayflower Group, and
We left to
Yeah.
self-insure.
they left to self-insure. I think the hopes were to try and hook up with some other other
towns.
communities, similar size, similar claims experiences, and it's very difficult to do that. And especially geographically, proximity, it's not something that's working out for us. So right now, we're exploring, we have had talks with Mayflower again. And we've talked with Maya, which is the other, really larger group, that it would be nice to join with one of them for reasons of stability with our prices, and, although we have a decent fund set up, it's never comfortable when you're out on your own, because if we had some sort of something catastrophic happens, we would eat through that fund fairly quickly, and that wouldn't be a position that we'd want to be in. So we've been talking since I've been here, that, we definitely have to do something. So now we're hoping to hear back from Maya fairly soon. In Plymouth County, or with Mayflower rather, is also sharpening their pencil and hopefully coming back to us with some ideas.
The revenue assumes the maximum property tax revenue increase of 2.5%, correct?
Correct.
What were you gonna say before Drew asked about health insurance? You were starting to say something, I'm trying to remember what it was. Scott?
Oh, you know what, the police department?
Oh, police department.
Obviously, they've had a lot of turmoil, a lot of folks leaving. The new chief's in there, he has some ideas, and that, looking forward to him coming to meeting with you and explaining them, but there's a fairly big ask on that one to try and get them back, that staffing back up to where it should be. I think, I want to say DPW.
What with police, what exactly is the ask?
Bodies.
'Cause I
9
know-
new?
And we were significantly down in unfilled positions at last check.
Well, we were down in unfilled positions and with people leaving, and I'm not sure. So he had put in for 9 new offices.
Is that net new?
I think we'd have to ask, not at that price, that wouldn't be net new, but there is some.
I don't believe it was net new. I think it was about 5 net new, I think. But the salary increase that's being requested is a 15% increase. So an extra $500,000 over what's budgeted for the current year.
So are there any new positions?
Looks like 9 new.
And that's
Yes,
without
some of them are new
any
positions.
bargaining implications. That's
Right.
on the current contract, which is expiring as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that isn't in here would be, we have bargaining with police, fire. I think we're done with clerical and library. Did we already, we did, actually, I think library was done, so.
Library's done, DPW is still out there too.
Yeah, so we have some bargaining obligations that are gonna come up, and not really sure where those are gonna land yet.
Are all the contracts up to date? Any expired or?
They're all expired.
Okay.
We did 1 year, we did 1 year extensions last year with police and fire, just because we didn't know, not that we feel a whole lot more comfortable with the, environment, the economic environment, but we did that to carry us through. But yeah, they're up again, they'll be up in July. DPW will be up and ready, the management union, they're all pretty much coming up this year.
But you're not looking at like multi-year expired where you're gonna have to go back and reset
No,
the rates
no.
or anything like that?
No, I
Okay,
don't think-
do back pay or anything?
No,
Okay,
shouldn't be, none of them, unless, obviously, we don't
yeah.
make it through, then it'd be something that we'll deal with in the fall or something. We have a couple, that Highway's been looking, and I think they've been asking from the past that they have 2 new positions that they could use, and again, that's something that I think would make, be a big benefit to the town to have that. There's a lot of things that they could take care of that they're unable to get to. One thing that I've talked to John Stone about that I would like to do, maybe in February or the end of January, is actually have one of these meetings, or a Saturday meeting where we can all go down to the DPW and survey the facilities, the equipment. He will get the senior bus and kind of bring us around to show us some of the parks and some of the facilities that they're maintaining, and just to give everybody a good idea of what the scope is of everything that they do. So, we post it, invite the selectmen and anybody else who's interested, but I think it'd be helpful for all of you to see it, just to see the sheer scope of it and the scope of the amount of equipment and things that they have to deal with. I know that when we did that with fire a few months ago, or whenever that was, it was nice, an eye-opening for everybody to get an idea of what those facilities were like, and just to see the equipment and everything that they're dealing with, so.
And then legal, we're looking for another 50 grand, which is a 50% increase from the.
Yeah, I think we had come to this committee probably to get more money last year for legal, and I don't expect, especially with all these contracts that we're gonna be bargaining. And I rely on them heavily for human resource issues right now because of that, because most of the contracts that were existing now are a series of MOUs. So what we're hoping and what we're trying to do with new council that we have that came on board when I came on is, we're trying to make comprehensive documents for each one, new document that, rather than series of MOUs, reflecting all of any new legal issues that have come up. And at the same time, we're almost done with our employee handbook and personnel policies that will govern all employees and, to some extent, even volunteers and committee members. So I see, in each one of those will have to be, impact bargained with all the different units and stuff. So I do anticipate that we're likely to have some more expenses associated with it.
Other questions? Else, anything?
No, I think it seems like we've definitely hit the high points of what I'm looking at right now.
When they start coming in, I think I had done one for at least my thoughts on a 5-year staffing plan on what my needs were. And as I've asked each department to do that. So I will give that to you probably when those respective departments come in and meet. I think I have most of them. It kind of gives you an idea. It's just a breakdown of what they think that they need, whether it's this year, next year, or a few years out. I think it's a helpful tool, it's a helpful exercise to put them through, and it's just good to see, for us to see, and then we'll put it together, or I'll put it together on sort of a bigger spreadsheet that we can follow over the years.
And could you just run through the new growth estimate, the notations that are on that last page there on the revenue budget forecast?
Yeah, I just got that this morning.
It's this one, so.
Yeah, do you want to talk on that, Sonia? Did you get a?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
I
what the
just,
question was.
the new growth estimate, I think that there was some notes in here from Yolanta. I didn't really.
Oh, sure. She was able to take a look at not only the history, but also permits that have been pulled to get an idea of where we might be trending for next year. So the current year was approved at $280,000, which was significantly less than we've seen the last couple of years. That's primarily because we had a lot of large projects that went online those last 2 years, and so now we're kind of down in a dip. But she is seeing a little bit of an increase again, not quite to that level, but she's expecting that real estate new growth will be about 310%, and then personal property is typically around 70,000, and she sees no reason to think that it won't be different this year. So we think we'll be able to plan for 380 fairly comfortably. And the risk with new growth is you don't know what it is until it's approved during the fiscal year. So you don't really know what it is until the fall after your fiscal year's already started. So it is an estimate, it's a best guess. And that's another reason that we're always very conservative with our revenue estimates as well.
Yeah, it's something that you can track the building permits as they come in and as they get to a certain portion of completion. But I think everybody saw, over the previous 5 or so years, subdivisions going in, larger homes, and plenty of them selling like hotcakes. And I don't think it had much to do with the water ban and moratorium, but things obviously just slowed down quite a bit. And, to be quite honest with you, I don't think we have really anything other than Zero Summer Street, obviously, of great magnitude. There's small, maybe 2-3 lot projects here, but I haven't seen anything huge on the horizon. Doesn't mean that it won't be coming.
Yep.
But that's obviously, that's kind of where that new growth number comes from.
Okay, thanks.
What's next on the timeline for the budget?
Well, so we start meeting with, in January, we start meeting with the departments.
January 5th.
Yeah. In the interim, Sonia and I will continue to work away at, our numbers. It won't be till closer to the end of January, we have any sort of sense where Chapter 70 and, unrestricted government aid is going. The upside is from all accounts that the tax collection from the state is going very well, much higher than projected. The rainy day fund for the state is in good shape, that they have federal dollars, that they're flush, and what they're gonna do with that, nobody knows. I would expect to see at least a modest increase in both Chapter 70 and unrestricted. But, until I see it, I won't believe it. But I'm hopeful. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, but on Monday night, we voted, or the selectmen voted to open the town meeting warrant for the annual town meeting, the special town meeting. I gave them a copy of this draft budget that I gave to you. And we did discuss, we're launching, our town meeting webpage is live, and we'll start putting these things up. The draft budget will start going up there. There'll be links to this meetings, to the schedule of meetings here, the schedule of meetings with the planning board as the draft warrant starts to get put together. Yeah, we'll probably fire something out Monday to try and get everybody to push it out on social media, to let everybody know that it's there, and if anybody who wants to see this, I know Sonia's gonna, there's a link for finances in the, so we'll get the debt schedule up there and revenue schedules and stuff like that to give as much information to everybody as we can. The plan is to close the town meeting warrant on February 14th. And I would like to do somewhere, maybe on February 21st, if we could, to have a joint meeting. It may be, can't be too much later because we want to obviously do it before town meeting. But we want to vote on the budget. We'd like to vote on the policies. It doesn't have to be a vote on the budget. Obviously it's up to this committee, but I would like this committee to have at least one joint meeting with them to discuss the budget and to discuss, in a joint vote on the policies would be great. So I would anticipate that sometime at that end of February. March 25th, we send out our mail for town meeting notices, and the plan is April 4th town meeting. Initially, I really wanted to get town meeting done on time because I was anticipating the fire station project being on there, and that would be something that goes to the ballot. And so it makes sense to have town meeting before the ballot. But I don't think that that's gonna be the case. I'd still like to have town meeting on time. I think it's a good practice. If if we don't wanna do town meeting on April 4th, then we should change the charter. But, but that's, not to say that, there may be forces against us as we go forward with this budget process. But I would like to continue moving forward and have that as our date, so.
Okay.
What are the forces working against us to not make that April 4th date?
A lot is where the state number is gonna come in. It's that unrestricted government aid, it's the Chapter 70 money, that goes towards the schools, because, that really does play a pretty big factor in it. I personally, I think that once we've seen the governor's budget, and then we see probably like the first round of either the House or the Senate budget, start to get a fairly good sense of where that's gonna come in. It's not gonna fluctuate a lot. But that's typically what towns are usually leery about.
That's the biggest
And
factor
when does
that's
that
out of
come
our
out?
hands.
And when does that come out?
Well, the initial governor budget's usually the end of January, and then
Okay.
we'll start seeing some other numbers in February. Well, it's the 15 years that I was in Duxbury, they had town meeting on March, second Saturday in March. And it is what it is. You kind of know the numbers of, at some point you get comfortable with the numbers. They've never come out, I can't imagine, at least in my time, they never came out wildly different than where they were on maybe that second pass of the budget. I don't have any reason to believe where the financial condition of the state right now that there'll be much of a difference in the budget, so. So I think we're in good shape, at least timeline, as far as getting it through. But we obviously have a lot of massaging to do with those numbers in the interim, and we will get everybody in here to talk about their budget and their needs. Again, we have to wait for the school. They'll have to do their budget and figure out what their needs are, and then we'll meet with them again.
Are we trying to get any amendments into the budget for special projects or anything like that for the state budget?
Yeah, we always do. Senator Keenan always reaches out to me. Mostly, anything we can get for roadway and infrastructure, we ask for. I did ask for, some money to do like some beautification projects and stuff, that bridge that goes over
Island Grove there.
the Memorial Bridge is something I know we asked CPC money for, things like that. There's, anything that we can come up with. There was some, we've been very lucky as far as some of the road projects like the roundabout, that they have to put in one, that there's a couple that are proposed. It seems like the funding is coming through on those. I know that if the federal, whatever they call the latest bill, goes through their infrastructure, we don't know how eventually that's going to trickle down. We don't know how that's going to pan out or play out. The state's doing the same thing when, they want to put money towards infrastructure. So when it gets to us, it'll be interesting to see exactly what we can do with it. This administration's been really good as far as our access to those kind of funds and grants, and how we can go about applying for them. They've made it a lot easier than it was in the past. So hopefully that stays with whatever administration comes up next. Some of those things that they've done,
Is that state level?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the opportunities for the municipalities are greater than they ever were, and the ability to, the ease of access to those grants is better than it ever was. It's much more streamlined. So hopefully they nobody tries to fix it.
Scott, I know we briefly touched upon this before, but could you send us where you currently are with the fiscal policy so we could maybe review those? I mean, with the understanding that I know you said you and you still have things you want to tweak on them.
I think we could highlight, Sonia and I could probably highlight a couple little things that we need to sort of button up, but yeah, I think it'd be great to get them out to you guys once more. I'll get them to the selectmen too.
Awesome. Thank you.
How often when was like these financial, when was the last time they were reviewed?
They looked fairly old. They're in the selectmen book. My guess is they were probably done sometime around 2015, maybe when they did the projections. I would like to think they did that. They look like, but they look like an older version. I've seen the version. And they're, they're not wildly different. They're, I think they just, ours are a little more comprehensive than the ones, but the other part is, nobody actually had them. So we had them, but nobody else actually had them. So I think that's the important part, is that we get them and everybody has them and knows that these are our guidelines to go by, these are our policies, and we should try sticking to them. And Sonia will tell you that the bonding companies really seem to like them. So they like it when you follow them too. It helps us a lot. Yeah, I kind of like policies, myself. That's why I'm looking forward to the new handbook and the new personnel policies and stuff.
Yeah, because it can be worse when you have policies and you don't follow them.
It will, and if nobody knows about them, it's hard to follow them,
Right.
right? So that's the other part. But yeah, you're right, it is bad if you have them and ignore.
Right.
I agree. So, I think that's about where we're at. Like I said, I'd like to pick a date sometime, and I think when we get John Stone in here, we'll talk to him about a date where we can have a field trip.
Based on the last schedule I saw from Sonia, he's scheduled to come on January 19th.
Yes. Yep, so we can either schedule it shortly after that, I think would probably be best, weather pending, obviously.
Yep.
And whether the- That's it.
All right.
Can I just ask
yep,
on the
Paul.
schedule here? We've got January 5th IT scheduled for 15 minutes. I know the budget's not big, but does that seem appropriate with the world we live in now? Everything that's going on, and we spend 15 minutes to go over the IT budget? It's like, what, I guess I'm trying to, like, how am I supposed to take that? It's like 15 minutes to talk about IT for the town.
Well, we don't set a
So-
timer.
Right.
Right, that's, these are approximate times. If we need to.
Right,
go-
but so
We need
it's
to go longer,
historical.
we go longer. One of the things is, and this differs department by department, but we will primarily focus on what their fiscal needs are, not getting into too in-depth a level of what's going on in the department.
Right, but when
So-
it comes to IT, how do we not question what's in place as far as the budget goes? We're saying, I mean, I'm just
We
saying, I
definitely-
mean, you look at what happened at Kronos, they ransomware. People are not going to get paid for a few weeks because they've said, we're dealing with this. Their platform got hit. It's like, I just don't know how, like, in the world that we live in, and technology drives so much, that, you know, to say, well, you know, the budget went up 4%. Oh, that's great. You had anybody? No? Okay, that's great. But do we have the proper infrastructure in place?
And we do go into those questions. I know IT specifically, the discussion doesn't get into like which vendor are we using for this or that. It's more of the things that we have in place, what is the cost difference last year to this year, licensing agreements. Are there things that we need to do additionally on top of what we were doing before? Is there hardware that we need additionally on top of what we had before? Those types of questions.
Right.
And Wayne runs a pretty tight ship with that department, so we don't tend to have he tends to present really succinctly what he needs, and
Yeah, and I'm not questioning, because I'll
Yeah.
do the liaison report, I'll give an update, because I didn't meet with Wayne, but it's like, in this world that we live, I mean, I said it when I saw it the first time I saw it here, it was about the IT budget, it's like, that's it? That includes salary? And he doesn't just do IT, he does facilities, he does it
A
all.
lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot,
He does a lot.
and it's, and that's where I'm just at, like, are we properly situated with the resources we have in IT? And if it's not here, then where is it, and who questions it?
here we question it.
Right, but if we,
And
I'm
Scott-
just, again, I'm
and
just,
Scott
if we have
questions it.
15 minutes,
Yeah, well, Scott questions that, that's a Scott year-round issue.
There's questions every day. But, I mean, so this schedule is sort of a carryover schedule. I think it's from well before I got here that they plug in the day. But I don't know that anybody, well, I don't know who, some of them, I guess, can only take 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but if it takes an hour to deal with IT, Veterans Library and Fire Department will still be here. there's no, I don't know that this committee has ever held fast to a timeline. Certainly,
Definitely not.
no, especially when Greg starts asking questions. You can pretty much throw the timer out the window. But, you
I've
know.
been so silent.
But, yeah, I know, I mean, I understand your concern, but I wouldn't feel as though we're, at least our intention on putting it together isn't to say, look, you only have 15 minutes to talk to IT. Because I am more interested in hearing everything that you ask them too. And I don't want anything left on the table, or I don't want anybody going home saying, I wish I had asked this, and not asked it.
And one of the things that does tend to happen as we start to get into, and even before we get into it, is it gets closer to the time of the schedule, people have conflicts and need to move. So it might be that veterans or library move from that night to, say, February 2nd or February 29th or one of the other nights that has maybe a slightly lighter schedule. And there's definitely movement and fluctuation within there. So, and if we need to have Wayne come back for a different discussion or a longer discussion, or we need to have library come back for another discussion, we just ask them to come back.
Okay.
So. Other questions?
No.
So January 5th is the first night that we have departments scheduled for. Between now and then is a very busy time for people outside of budgetary purposes, or adding to their, or taking away from their family budgets. Do we have anything that we'll need to go over between now and January 5th?
No, I think we've got everything to you. And certainly if you guys are looking for anything, shoot us an email, and we'll get it out to you. I think the only other heads up that I would give you that may be an expense that we're going to have to deal with is the plumbing system here at Town Hall. Seems to have some serious issues. And I'm not sure, I think right now there's a temporary fix that may be around the $3,000 or $4,000 range, but I'm told that the main sewer line coming out of the building, or drain, and then when it leaves the building, it's called sewer, is not pitched properly, and it goes pretty much
That
out
doesn't sound.
the front door, down Glenowitz to a drain manhole at somewhere on the flagpole. So if that's the case, and that has to be fixed, and just judging on how many times that they've shut the bathrooms down since I've been here, I'm thinking we have to address it. So that could be a big ticket item that we weren't expecting or aware of, but I'll keep you guys up to date on that.
With that, we move to the old business portion of our agenda, liaison reports. Don't have anything. Paul?
I got an update on IT. Just want to thank Wayne Norling. I met with him recently to, walk me through what's going on in the IT space, the budget. As everybody knows, Wayne wears many hats.
Yes, he
Facilities,
does.
IT. He's of tremendous, my humble opinion, tremendous value to the town.
Absolutely.
And he's not anticipating any new expenditures for FY '23. Did make note of the public records request is just overwhelming. I mean, on top of everything he has to do, with the Holbrook Police and all that, and the Avenue Police and, public records request is just, it's very time consuming. And then, he's had to deal with the occasional ransomware and to bring things back on that. So, I think, he's doing all that he can. That's where I just think from trying to help him, and he had talked about not in this budget for an FY '22, trying to get an assistant. And to me, the town needs to think about getting him an assistant now, because if something because I asked him, I says, what if you hit the lottery and you leave tomorrow? And he said, well, I won't. I said, no, what happens if you can't do the job?
So the phrase we use at work is, what if you get hit by the turnip truck?
Yeah.
So.
And we don't have a backup for him. And we, and what, that's a risk the town's taking. And how do we want to address that? He's got a server room up there that, it doesn't have what it needs. And that's probably about $30,000 that he needs to put into that. I mean, he's supporting over 100 PCs across the town, about 20 tablets, 25 phones, different types of phones. And then you've got, when you think about the PCs, it's like all the operating systems have to be constant. How does he do that? How is he doing it by himself? And then the thing I really believe that the town needs is, he's doing all of his penetration tests and vulnerability scans himself. That's great. But we also need somebody from the outside coming in doing it to make sure that, hey, listen, is everything where it should be?
Like a secret shopper type of thing?
Well, you hire somebody, they come in.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, and just to, and some of it is just, if it's just to reassure Wayne, it's like, yeah, you're running a good show.
You're doing this right.
Yeah, because, even when, on the server, it's like, if he's running, 2012 and he's got to upgrade to, that 2012, it's coming out of service, making that there's no more service patches coming out for that. Like, is he where he needs to be? It's just the idea. And that's where it's like, I feel like I'm just trying to, he needs support. Because what his role is here and the exposure, I mean, we're running a payroll system that is on DOS. I don't know what the exposure is for that. I mean, that's.
Probably less.
Right, but it just, again, we need an assessment of our IT, and we have with tech capital planning, do we have IT in the capital planning?
Well, we don't have it yet, but
Right.
that will be a huge component, I would imagine, yes.
Yeah, but if we don't have it yet, we haven't thought about it, so street sweepers and dump trucks are great, but when people can't access town services because of ransomware and Wayne's not around, it's like, what are we doing? The website. And then even just the idea of training around security awareness for staff. You can still access Facebook, Gmail, and typically, probably 85 to 90% of, incidents are because somebody clicks on the wrong thing. And that's all training. We don't do any training of the town. And it's not, and I'm not saying this is to criticize anybody, because everybody's working really hard, and it's obvious. But it's like, I'm just trying to, hey, can we get Wayne some help? Can we get the town some help here to protect it on the IT side? And that's why I was just reacting to the 15 minutes, because it's like, you could spend a couple hours with Wayne talking about what is it, but he will be the first one oh no, I'm okay.
Yeah, well.
And it's like, but that's great from a budgeting standpoint, but is it what's best for the town? Is there a way we can help Wayne?
No, look, I'm all for having, another person in there with Wayne. I would love to have a facilities manager. I would prefer somebody who was in charge of all the town buildings, just that one person. And there are savings in that to a certain degree. I'd love to have an HR person. But just those three, it's about $500,000. That's and you're right, though, there's things like that if you don't spend the $500,000, or you don't spend, the case of one person, maybe $60,000 all in, what kind of position are we putting ourselves in if something goes south?
Yeah, because we don't have any cyber insurance. We don't, And honestly, like the way I get, way we're situated, I don't even think we could get it. Because it's, that whole space has changed so much with it, to actually go through the process to get it, we probably couldn't even get insured.
We've worked with Wayne and I think BizHub is who we're with now. And the things that Wayne has told me that we would have to do to get the insurance would make it very difficult for the average citizen to even access our website. It's actually hard to access sometimes on our website anyways, where, but there's requirements for double authentication and all sorts of other things and user logins. And, I mean, we're supposed to be easily and readily accessible. So I don't know what the answer is, but you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a role of the finance committee, but I just meeting with him and listening to.
It's certainly our role and your role as liaison to bring this to the attention of both the committee and
Yeah, because, I mean, he's talking about an assistant, but he's like, oh, looking at FY '24, and it's like, that's something that we, if nothing else, just assess the risk of not having that in place.
Where is, speaking of risk, where is risk analysis in general done? Because there's a financial risk, there's reputational risk, there's all, but financial risk, obviously, I think would fall with our purview, but.
Well, and we have our auditors come through annually and take a look, and they give us a heads up if there's issues. Cyber risk?
Not cyber, I'm risk in general, so
Yeah.
that's where I come from, but, just.
I guess it depends on what kind, I mean, we have all different types of risk that we look at. We
Yeah.
have,
But there's no risk report anymore.
yeah, like an overall one?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of that we've ever done. We.
That's just a question, I'm not saying you should, or.
I know in the past in other towns we've done risk assessments, but
Yeah.
not holistic risk. It would be specific to, what's gonna happen with sea level rise, what's gonna happen with the, when a Nemo storm event comes, what's gonna happen when the pandemic hits, and we had all sorts of folders and
Yeah.
binders and all sorts of things to
Yeah.
tell us what to do that, but nothing specific, I'm sure IT probably has somewhat of a risk assessment, but nothing
Yeah.
formal that I've been involved in. But it's something that we could look at, and should.
Yeah, because I think of it as a minimum, just an independent pen test and vulnerability scan, because I think the school department, did a pen test last year. So just to give you a sense of a benchmark, like where are we? I mean, Wayne does it, but, having somebody outside, because there are things that they're going to offer, like, we've got this massive Log4j vulnerability.
Yeah, Log4j.
Yeah, the thing around Java. I mean, and they said this is going to impact the internet for years. And we're going through a pen test now, and they actually have going to structure part of it around this vulnerability now, because it's so new and so, it's such a risk for so many organizations, because it's like almost any software you use, or SaaS, or platform as a service, like, you could be impacted by this. And so that's where the value of having somebody from the outside do it. Because I just don't know how Wayne keeps up with it, honestly. I mean, it's just amazing, all the stuff that he does. So my hat's off to Wayne.
Absolutely.
Well, we can have a special night just for Wayne.
Well, I don't want to torture the guy either.
It sounds like what you're saying is all very positive, so I don't think you'd be torturing him at all.
Yeah, I just
You're
want to
right
make
home,
sure.
so.
Yeah. So that's all I have for my liaison report. Thank you.
Any other liaison reports? Russ?
No.
Greg from online, any liaison reports?
No, I'm good.
All right. All right, correspondence. We do have a letter from the Mass Municipal Association.
It's probably a bill.
I think it's dues. Looks very much like dues. Thank you for your continued membership, and a bill for dues.
So did anybody get the training? I think it was a training that they had offered at one point. I'm gonna see, and I asked Denise Baker, I had left you guys some handbooks.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There's
Yeah,
an
we got that.
updated version of that, so I'm trying to get you guys the updated version of it. It's probably just gonna be an electronic, it's probably just gonna be a
Good.
link. If you need it printed, let me know.
Yeah. No, that would be
It's a lot of paper, as you can see. I thought those handbooks were great when I first got on.
I didn't see the handbook.
It was about this thick.
Was it paper?
You might not have
Yeah.
been here.
Oh, I
that
wasn't
week.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right there.
So that's been
I was
updated?
looking for the
Yeah,
electronic.
yeah, so my guess is the changes aren't crazy, but whatever they are, they're accessible to you. So I will find out how and get you the link anyways. And then
Appreciate it.
And then if there are any, and I'll check with them if there's any sort of training that we can get through them, whether it be online. I doubt if there's anything in person, but I'm sure we can get something that you guys want to do it. It'd be great.
So there will be in-person regional meetings in the spring of 2022, resuming their normal practice of trying to move around the state and offer timely programs. Handbook updates underway. And that's about all. And then our dues bill.
You want me to take?
Do I normally give that? I normally give that to Deb, but
Oh, yeah, give it to them then. Should we vote on whether to pay it or not?
I think we will definitely pay that one. And then next, I have a stack of conflict of interest law updates with signatures. Is this from you?
Yeah, I'll give them to Leanne.
So I think these are for individual people because they have to, with what they need to do, whether they need to sign and acknowledge the form, sign the acknowledgement form, and take the test. So the state's conflict of interest online course, we all need to take every
2 years.
every 2 years. You have to go through it and take the test. So let's see, that's Greg. Chris.
I took mine.
Says you need to take it and sign the form.
Well, if you took it, then you just send the
Paul,
copy of the.
down to Paul, Joe
I
is.
brought it in.
Yeah, I already took this.
Yeah, I brought
Did you
it
bring
in.
them into Leanne?
Yeah.
I emailed it to her. Yeah, when I got on.
Mine,
Yeah, 'cause
mine
she asked
says,
for
Yeah.
sign the acknowledgement form only, and I know I took that in the last one. I was sending it to you guys. And here's Drew's, sign the form and take the test, which is,
Yeah, I took the test, yeah.
did both of those. I think I emailed them to her, so just.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
saw,
Another copy?
I saw my little
Yeah.
certificate
Yeah.
today.
Test that you can't get wrong.
Which all test will.
they're like, no, try another one.
Yeah.
Try again. It's seems very ethical.
Who do we bring these to?
Leanne?
Oh,
Yep, town clerk's office.
Can I ask an old business question?
You can indeed.
Um,
I'm gonna give mine signed to Scott, because I only need
This-
You want me
to
to
sign.
sign?
The status of the annual audit, when do you expect to get sign off?
Sonia, when will we?
I don't have an estimate on timeline at this moment.
And I think I'll probably wait till after the first of the year to get together to put some sort of bid doc together.
Okay.
And you and was Joe Rojas?
yeah,
Oh, you were gonna be on it?
yeah.
Okay.
And then
There's no
just
hurry for it.
a quick note of
You need help
business.
putting that together. Barry. You're putting an RFP out, right?
Yeah.
You need help with it.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely
Let me
reach
know.
out.
Thank you, Paul.
So, if I could just, when the financials are issued, and I'm sure there'll be a management letter, is there any way they could come in and present that to the finance committee? Review it with us? Because I don't know if that might be helpful for the town, just to.
They should, and I think they do offer to do it for the selectmen, and I don't think we've done it
Oh,
here since I've been here, only because of the first year we were just meeting on Zoom. But I do believe that's part of the agreement, is they do a presentation, so we could do a joint,
Yeah,
Meeting for that.
if we knew when the presentation was gonna
yeah.
be.
No,
Yeah, that'd be
I'll
good.
schedule it, even if it isn't included, I'm sure that they'll be happy to do it.
yeah, I think it'd be great. Thank you.
One piece of business that I wanted to note, one of the members of our committee, Katie Comas, has stepped down from her post on the finance committee, and I wanted to very publicly thank her for the several years that she was on the committee and the time and effort that she put in. Her family and work-life balance made her schedule very crazy, especially during COVID, working in the healthcare industry, so she ran out of the ability to spend time on finance committee and had to step away, but we very much appreciate all of the effort and work that she put in over the years on the finance committee. We do have an opening because of that. Anyone interested can reach out to the town moderator, Sean Riley. He has several names for potential candidates and is gathering more and discussing with people the potential opening.
Is it just one opening, right?
It's just the one opening, yes. So, despite the number of people missing here tonight, we have a couple of people who had scheduling conflicts tonight, but we discussed, the next meeting will be January 5th, so I hope everyone has a very good holidays and Christmas, New Year's, and we will see you all bright and early into the,
Just for review of minutes, we're not doing that?
we don't have any minutes
Okay.
that have been disseminated to
Okay.
review for this meeting, sorry. I should have mentioned that.
I only bring it because it's on
Yep.
the agenda.
Yep,
Just wanna make
absolutely.
sure.
I meant to say that before I went to it, so. Yep. So next meeting, January 5th, back here, 7 o'clock. We will have on that night, IT, Veterans Department, the Library Department, and the Fire Department. So a busy
It'll
night.
be a long night.
So might be our longest night.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
So motion and a second, any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning? Opposed?
Aye.
Greg is opposed or delayed in favor. Either way,
Just give me a delay.
either way, we are adjourned. Thank you all, and have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.
Same to all.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Merry
You too,
Christmas,
thanks,
everybody.
Matt.
Merry Christmas.